Welcome back to the program. We're now joined by our state senator, the affable Tom Davis. Senator, thanks for joining us.
Great to be with you.
Hey, great you're here. Senator, we have much to discuss. Let's start with the failed nuclear projects. Update us on what's going on in Columbia.
Yeah, I mean, kind of to recap where we are, about $9 billion have been put into the ground just north of Columbia in Fairfield County on an uncompleted nuclear facility. And the joint venture partners, Santee Cooper and SCNG, have determined that it's not economically feasible to go forward with the project. So I think there are four things we need to do. The first thing, I think we need to preserve that asset out there. We need to go ahead and make sure it doesn't deteriorate. We need to make sure that the thing that's out there remains in good condition. Because the factors that make that project economically unviable right now, the low cost of natural gas and the absence of any carbon tax in Washington, D.C., those things could change in the future. And in the future, nuclear could become a viable option again. So I think we need to take steps to preserve that asset and keep it in good condition. That'll cost about $10 million a year to keep it in good condition and keep it from wasting. And that sounds like a lot of money. But given the investment that the ratepayers have put into it, $9 billion, I think it's prudent to keep it like a fly in amber for the next couple, 3 years. You know, second to that, we need to repeal the Base Load Review Act. The Base Load Review Act is the state law that was passed before I went into the Senate that allowed the utility companies to charge ratepayers for construction costs, and essentially it socialized the risk. It allowed SCANA and Santee Cooper to continue on with risky behavior that wasn't supported by market reality. So we need to repeal that act to make sure a fiasco like this doesn't happen in the future. You know, thirdly, we need to go ahead and look at the regulatory structure. We really don't have an entity up in Columbia right now that's looking out for the ratepayers. You've got the Office of Regulatory Staff, the Public Service Commission, the Public Utility Review Committee, but none of them really look out for the ratepayers as a whole. So we need to do a better job of making sure we have a good monitor up there. So those three things, I think, give us a good start. You know, fourth, I would then say we need to start opening up the market, open up providers to others besides just Santee Cooper and SCNG and Duke Power. It's never good to put all your eggs in one basket. I'd like to bring in other providers, more competition in that sector, and I think that'll be best for our long-term energy future in South Carolina.
Tom, we're reading that Dominion's considering a buyout of SCANA, and they would like to continue to have ratepayers pay for some of that liability. Tell us, how did the utility company manage to pass investment risk on to ratepayers, and how are you going to protect public interest going forward?
Yeah, I've got several questions regarding this proposed Old Dominion SCANA or SCNG merger. I mean, on the surface, it sounds good. It talks about giving $1,000 back to all ratepayers. But in return, what ratepayers are going to have to do is pay about $25 a month for the next 20 years. I mean, it's almost like a payday loan. I mean, you get a little bit of money now, but then you pay forever. I think there's a better deal for ratepayers out there. I want to take a good, hard look at that deal. It looks good on the surface, Kevin, but I think we really need to go under the hood and figure out what's in the best interest of ratepayers.
Senator, you led an educational campaign on medical marijuana. Last year, the state issued licenses to grow the marijuana plant to farmers that included Clemson coach Danny Ford. The Justice Department under Jeff Sessions is now enforcing a policy that classifies marijuana the same as heroin, with the DOJ facing suit from patients and now 6 states having legalized recreational marijuana. What is the status of medicinal marijuana in South Carolina today?
Right. I mean, what you're referring to, Kevin, and what Danny Ford and others are doing, they're growing industrial hemp. And the hemp is authorized under the Federal Farm Act, providing it has 0.03% THC or less. So it does have some of the medicinal qualities as cannabis, but industrial hemp that they're growing has a much lower concentration of THC. Some of the medicines that cannabis can deal with, autoimmune diseases, neurological diseases, epilepsy, chronic pain, Crohn's disease, things of that nature, that does involve cannabis and that does involve THC. And what I have proposed is a very conservative bill, recognizing that South Carolina is a very conservative state. We're not interested in recreational use of cannabis in South Carolina, but 75% of South Carolinians are interested in allowing cannabis to be prescribed by doctors to patients who need it, as long as the doctor remains involved in that process. So what I'm trying to explain to my colleagues up in Columbia is that this is a very conservative bill. It is not recreational, it's simply medicinal. It has very specific conditions for which doctors can prescribe it, and a very controlled process whereby the state makes sure that it's not diverted for recreational use. So I remain optimistic. I mean, I think it's a moral and philosophical imperative that we allow doctors to prescribe medicine for patients who need it. But at the same time, it's got to be a conservative bill because I realize that South Carolinians do not want this to be the first step toward recreational use.
Yeah, Senator, the science behind the medical benefit is undisputed. But I want you to help me understand the opposition you hear from your colleagues up in Columbia. And do you think you can do broad-based reform here in the state?
Well, you know, the opposition, I guess, is rooted in the fact that they think cannabis leads to more dangerous and more destructive things. And what I'm trying to explain is this is a very conservative program. It simply authorizes doctors to provide patients with medicine that those doctors believe they need. And so what I try to do, Kevin, is frame the issues in terms of who should be deciding what somebody gets to take for their illness. Should it be the doctor and the patient in consultation with each other, or should it be 170 politicians in Columbia? I don't think that we want lawmakers in charge of what we put into our bodies for medicinal purposes. That's what we trust and put our faith in doctors for. So that's the way I try to frame the issue. Eventually this is going to happen. There's no reason whatsoever to deny this. We allow opium-based medicines, Percocet, Oxycontin, things of that nature, much more dangerous than cannabis. So it's about education and it's about changing some long-established mindsets. I'm semi-optimistic about getting it done this year. The only reason I'm qualifying it is because we've got so many other pressing issues up there. The nuclear issue that you mentioned, we still have to reform our state's pension system, but I'm going to try really hard to get this across the finish line this year, Kevin.
All right, Tom Davis represents us in the South Carolina Senate. Tom, thanks so much for being here today.
Great to be with you, Kevin. Happy New Year.
You too, sir. Always a pleasure. Upon our return, we've got Catherine Forrester from the League of Women Voters, plus Kelly Calder is here from Clean Eats. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.